Hey, welcome to this Tuesday with Michelle. I am your girl, Michelle, bringing you the hottest content this Tuesday. What's going on, everybody? What's good? What's poppin'? What's new? I hope you're doing well wherever you're at. Today's episode is going to be a kickback episode where we're just going to have a little chit chat. And this is actually based off of something that I watched on TV. So, for those of you who know me personally, you know that I absolutely think Steve Harvey is so inspirational, just like what he's done in his life. And just, like I love Steve Harvey. Like he's amazing. And one day I'm going to meet him. And I'm just putting it here on this podcast so that, one day someone will be like, oh, wow, she did say it in the podcast that she's going to meet him. Anyway, let's fast forward past this part. Anyway, so Steve Harvey has a show. It's called Judge Steve Harvey. And basically, in an episode, you have 3 cases. And so this is based on season 1, episode 8. And what the show or how the show works is like 2 people will come. You have the plaintiff who's suing the defendant for something, and then the defendant can like countersue the plaintiff, right? So this particular case, you have a couple that's been married for 14 years. And the issue that they're having is that the man hates his wife's cooking, right? But the person who's actually suing is the wife. So she is the plaintiff, and she says, I'm suing him for $6,000. $5,000 and some change was actually spent on like groceries and like wasted ingredients because this man wouldn't eat it. And then a part of the money, I guess, to add up to the 6,000 is more of like she wants compensation for emotional distress and for the time that she wasted cooking for her husband. Then the husband is countersuing his wife. He shows a receipt of like over $5,000 that's been spent over, let's say, like 2 months or 3 months, right? And he's saying, I spent all this money on takeout because her cooking sucks. I can't eat her food. And then the other part of the money, he is saying that it's for cooking lessons, to which Steve says, okay, cooking lessons for you or for her? And he says for her. So anyway, it's a pretty messy situation, as we can see here. So some things that come up in their testimonies or in whatever that they're saying is that the wife says her husband is a mama's boy, right? Because he basically compares his wife's cooking to his mother's cooking, and he's always like, your cooking sucks, like you're really terrible at this. Even in the court, guys, this man literally said her cooking is disgusting. Woo! Like, like there are better ways to package something. You know what I mean? Anyway, so it's like the cooking is disgusting. He's like, I grew up in the South, and my mom used to make like mashed potatoes and gravy and all of that stuff, and this woman's cooking is just, it's not good. So I end up having to basically order out, right? So she is like, well, the thing is that this man, first of all, he's a mama's boy. He was spoiled growing up. He actually never ate vegetables until he was like over the age of 30. And her issue is that he doesn't appreciate her cooking. And he's pretty much like really condescending, really critical of anything that she ever cooks and stuff like that, right? And she says, he basically doesn't appreciate my efforts, to which this man said, and I quote, I appreciate it, but I can't eat it. Guys, like, that was really painful to hear. Anyway, these people have kids. They have 3 kids, and this man is even claiming that kids can't even eat the food that this woman cooks. And what they'll do in this court is they'll, show evidence, right? So there was a video that the husband submitted, and he was tasting some of the food that his wife has made, which was, I think, something like pasta or like casserole of some sort. And so in the video, he's like, it looked good to me. You know what I mean? But anyway, so in the video, he's like, oh, like this is terrible, you substituted tomato sauce for like tomato paste. And then another exhibit that he submits is a photo of a pecan, so people say pecan pie, some people say pecan pie that she made. And the truth of it is that when you looked at the pecan pie from the outside, it doesn't have any pecans on it, right? Like everyone knows that pecan pies will usually have the pecans on top. And so Steve Harvey, being a comedian that he is, he asked the people in the courthouse, hey guys, like, do you think this looks like a pecan pie? And people are like, no, right? So all of this to say that she's not a great baker, but I think one thing that Steve Harvey and me as the viewer and other people in the courthouse could agree on was the fact that she is probably an okay cook, right? Because the food that she made actually looked fine. And this man is more of just comparing his wife to his mother, and he's just not satisfied because she doesn't cook the type of food that his mom cooked, or maybe when she cooks it, she's just not good at it. You know what I mean? So why are we gathered here? We're gathered here because I feel like this is something, of course, that was seeing on TV that happened in these people's marriage. But I feel like sometimes it actually happens in relationships where, it might not be that you as the girl, you're being compared to like the mom, or you as the guy, you're being compared to somebody's dad, but it could be some sort of comparison here and there. It doesn't have to be like, oh, you're being compared to like family, right? Sometimes maybe you're being compared to the ex-girlfriend, like, or maybe you're being compared to the ex-boyfriend, or you're being compared to a friend that this person has. And so I think that in general, taking that whole topic of comparison, it's just not a good thing, right? Because when you compare someone to somebody else, you're essentially not valuing that person for who they are and like what they bring to the table, which is not nice. Like, especially going back to this case, these people have been married for 14 years. And for 14 years, she's been hearing this over and over again, right? Like, this man won't eat her food, says like she sucks at cooking, compares her to the mom and all of that stuff. So I think even in relationships, right, something that we have to be careful of, and this applies to both men and women, is to just be careful not to compare whoever you're with to either people you're related to or people that you've dated in the past, because it's really, first of all, it's just really hurtful because the person can never change to become that other person. And so it's kind of like you're setting a standard for someone that maybe, hey, like they could never reach that, right? And also I think in this case where, this guy is comparing the wife's cooking to his mother's cooking, you're now like a, let's say, 38-year-old man. And let's say for like 20, if he lived with his mom for 26 years, for 26 years, all you ate was your mom's food, right? Everybody knows that a mama's cooking is just amazing. Like, you can never compare your own mom's cooking to other people's cooking. You know what I mean? So it's really unfair to compare someone to somebody who raised you, because this person hasn't been in your life that long enough to start off with. And also, I will say, in the spirit of not being biased as well, this happens even with women, where apparently some women will compare their boyfriends or their husbands to like their father or like to their brother, right? Like, oh, these great male figures in my life are doing or have done this for me, and you just don't do it for me. And you keep singing that song over and over again. Now, also, I think at this point, I will say that as a woman, the way that my brother treats me or has treated me this whole time, or how my father treats me or has treated me this whole time, right? Because of how they have loved me and how they treat me, there is definitely a standard that comes with that when it comes to the man I want to be with, right? So I'm not saying that you should then be like, oh, just accept anything. Let's say, for example, you're so loved by your brother, you're so loved by your father, and then a man comes along and he doesn't show you that love. I'm not saying you should settle, but I'm saying that you shouldn't say that to the person and keep saying it over and over again. Like, oh, why can you not be like, don't do direct comparisons. Like, oh, why can't you be like my dad and do this for me? Why can't you be like my brother and do this for me, right? And it's not even just a comparison of how this person treats you compared to, how other people treat you. Sometimes there's also comparisons of, why can't you treat me the way that so-and-so's boyfriend treats her? Please, 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 if there's one thing we can take away from this, is don't compare people. That's just really, really hurtful to anybody who's being compared. Now, I also just like getting closure from a lot of things. So I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh, so how did this case end? Going back to the case from Steve Harvey, the conclusion that he comes to is, look, this woman has had to go through this with you for 14 whole years. Like, 14 years is a long time to have somebody tell you over and over again how your cooking sucks and how their mother's cooking is way better than your cooking. So basically, he awards her the $6,000. And on top of that, he awards her an extra $4,000, which apparently he said that's the maximum. I guess maybe 10,000 is the maximum he can award in his type of court. I don't know. But he also awards a 4,000 on top of that. And then he says, and all the money that you're getting, which is the 10K, is for pain and suffering. So for those of you who wanted closure, that's how that story ended. But tying it back to just relationships and not even marriage in general, the takeaway is just don't compare people. It's, I don't know if when people do the comparison thing, they're trying to motivate the person that they're with to do better, but it actually does not motivate them. It actually just degrades them. So be very, very careful with the words that you use in relationships, because they could have a greater impact. And, I feel like, especially in the context of being in a relationship with someone, or being in a marriage with someone where these people have been together for 14 years, this stuff that you would say to somebody carries into other parts of their lives, right? So if you're always like condescending about like their cooking, or you're always condescending about the things that they can't do that like maybe your father did or your brother did, it could do something to their self-esteem, and then that could trickle into things beyond the relationship, right? Like just into their lives in general. So yeah, thank you guys so much for listening. I am curious to hear what you guys' thoughts are on this case in particular. And actually, if you can watch it, it's towards the end. It's like the last case that they did in that episode. Let me know. So, I think it's a very interesting thing, right? Because on one hand, it's really painful to think about being compared to somebody's mom for 14 years. On the other hand, if it is true, right, what the husband is saying, that he can't eat the food, it's also really difficult to eat food that you think is inedible for 14 years. So it's a little bit of a sticky situation. But let me know, guys. Do you think somebody's in the right here? Do you think somebody's in the wrong? What are your thoughts? That's what I want to know. So yeah, thanks so much for listening once again. Look forward to this Friday's episode, guys. It is going to be spicy. We are coming in hot. It's going to be good. Thanks so much for listening. Peace.